The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday, July 15th, already in the middle of July. God, summer will be over soon. Hope everybody is having a fantastic week, and we are here to cover the news. All right, guys, I was smiling because Lincoln says, I wonder what Yaron thinks of the new anime grok. Anyway, Yaron doesn't think of the new anime grok, so I have no idea. I haven't seen, don't know what it is, and have no opinion. As somebody who doesn't know much about anime, it would be meaningless to me. But enjoy, guys, enjoy. All right, everybody, let's see. Where should we start? We'll start with inflation. So inflation came in, depending on who you read, right? Some publications say it came in higher than expectations. Some publications say it came in lower than expectations. Some MAGA commentators are basically saying there's no inflation at all. But inflation did come in at 2.7% in June. That's an annualized rate, of course. That's not a literal 2.7% in June, which is up from May when it was at an annual basis of 2.4%. And at least according to Financial Times, above expectation, which were 2.6%. That's from analyst expectations based on a survey by Bloomberg. Although I think I read on Bloomberg that it came in and it matched expectations. So I don't know. But anyway, 2.7%. Trump knows exactly how to analyze these numbers. So Trump posted on his Truth Social network, he posted consumer prices low, all caps. Bring down the Fed rate now. So Trump very enthused about these numbers. He's quite happy with inflation rate running at 2.7% on an annualized basis. That means your dollars, I mean, if these numbers are reflective of your particular basket of goods, what you purchase, but if this is reflective of the loss of purchasing power in the dollar, your dollar now is worth relative to a year ago, basically, it's basically worth 2-point-something% less. Let's see. I think we have the annualized. Yeah, the 12-month inflation number is 2.9%. So over the last 12 months, your dollars have lost almost 3%, basically 3%. So every dollar is worth 99 cents. And that sounds like a little, but do that every year for a long period of time, and soon your dollars are not worth that much. And I'm going to have to raise my targets on the SuperChat because $20 is like, it's not $20 anymore. So it's still a high rate. It's still a high rate. What is the ideal inflation rate? The ideal inflation rate, I think, is somewhere around zero. Negative inflation, a small negative inflation wouldn't be bad. Your dollar is actually buying more every month, a little bit, a tiny little bit would be good. You want stability. You want long-term stability. So I think zero is good. I think zero is good. So 2.7 is a lot, and but Trump doesn't care. Trump just wants low interest rates because he believes that low interest rates will juice the economy. Stock prices will go up. Economic activity in the United States will go up. That'll increase GDP, even if it also potentially increases inflation, which will supposedly, he hopes, he prays, because it's not based on any economic understanding, also reduces the cost of the debt And what else would happen if the Fed decreased interest rates? I mean, the reality is the only interest rate the Fed can decrease is how much they pay banks for the reserves that the banks hold at the Fed. The Fed does not determine the 10-year bond, which is what your mortgage rate is pegged to. It doesn't determine the prime rate, which is basically the rate at which banks lend to businesses or very safe businesses, or the basis on which they lend to businesses. It doesn't, it only controls one rate, which is a very short-term rate, which it pays to banks to keep their money on reserve at the Fed. And of course, the lower that rate is, the greater the incentives banks have to not keep reserves at the Fed, to use those reserves to make loans, thus increasing economic activity and increasing the circulation of money and potentially increasing, the consumer price index, because there's more money now going out there, chasing goods, chasing investments, and that then manifests itself in a reduction in the purchasing power of the dollar. That's the conventional theory, and that's why Jerome Powell is not reducing interest rates, because he believes 2.7 is too high, and he hopes that by keeping inflation of 2.7, by keeping interest rates where they are right now, he hopes to slowly reduce inflation to where the Fed wants it. I want it at 0, but the Fed wants it at 2%. Why 2%? God only knows. But or the gods of economics only knows. The gods of modern economic theory only knows. But they want it at 2%. This is too high. And this is why, by the way, today, stocks went down. Stocks declined. Because, as I've told you many times, as interest rates go down, all else held constant, asset prices should go up. And that includes, for example, stocks. So if nothing else changes, but interest rates go down, stock prices go up. Because the value of those cash flows that stocks generate in the future goes up as interest rates go down. Future money is more valuable today with low interest rates. High interest rates, future value, future dollars are worth less today. So stocks are going down today because of the inflation number and the fear now that Jerome Powell will not reduce interest rates as fast as the market would want, in spite of the heavy pressure that he is coming under from Donald Trump. Donald Trump constantly, almost daily, is tweeting against Powell and demanding that he reduce interest rates and telling the world that you can expect a new Federal Reserve chairman, and there's talk already of nominating somebody now, even though Trump, it's questionable whether Trump can fire Powell. He probably can't, so he has to wait until next year to replace him, but he might announce who it will be now, and in order to put even more pressure on Powell to lower rates. Now, again, I don't know where rates should be. If 2.7 is a real measure of inflation, consumer price index is not the greatest measure in the world. But if 2.7 is right, and if you believe that the real rate of return, the non-inflationary, no risk rate of return is somewhere between 1% and 2%, then the short-term, interest rates should be somewhere between 3.7 and 4.7, and that's where it is. So at 2.7% inflation, interest rates seem to be where they should be. The 10-year rate went up quite a bit to 4.5. today, reflecting again the same kind of thinking, the thinking that if inflation is really at 2.7, then, and if we want to return beyond inflation, then we need to charge whatever. The other thing that's going on is this idea that tariffs are inflationary. Now, let me say this again. Tariffs in and of themselves are not inflationary. They raise the costs of certain things. They raise the costs of certain things. But since people don't necessarily have more money to spend, other costs have to come down. So it's not that tariffs are inflationary. It's the tariffs raise the cost of certain goods, and by raising the cost of certain goods, you will probably buy less of them, and it changes the way we spend our money. So it's not inflationary if what we mean by inflation, a devaluation of our currency, less purchasing power of our currency because it's being devalued. It just means we change our allocation of how we spend our money, not based on our own values, not based on our own preferences, not based on anything objective, but based on a new tax on certain products, but not on others. So, for example, and this is why inflation numbers can be so problematic when we just look at CPI or look at some way. So if you look at actual goods, some goods went up a lot. So like linens up at a 5.9% annual rate. Oranges up at 4.7%. Olives 4.4%. Cookware 4%. Audio equipment 2.9%. Major appliances 2.4%. Coffee only 2.2%, although once those tariffs to Brazil go to 50%, I expect coffee to rise in price quite significantly. On the other hand, eggs, which are primarily domestic, right, and which have gone up in the past because of the culling of chickens and all those problems, are down 10.8%. So eggs on an annualized basis are down 10.8%. So you can't, it's very hard to interpret these numbers, inflationary numbers. All you can say is prices are generally going up. Cost of living is going up. Inflation is up. It's higher than it should be. And the way to stop it in terms of a monetary policy is to, contract the money supply. And tariffs don't help. Tariffs just distort our consumption decisions. And they cause certain parts of our basket of goods to go up, even if other parts go down. So tariffs don't help. And, Trump berating the Federal Reserve chief don't help. And stocks have gone up as Trump has berated him because stock markets are expecting the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates, which will increase stock valuations. Now you see a lot of commentators commenting on inflation, saying the effect of tariffs are finally showing up through inflation, and so on. But again, real inflation is a monetary phenomenon. It's a consequence of a growth in the amount of money chasing a given amount of goods. It is not a supply phenomenon. That is something else. That is not monetary inflation, which is what we refer to. It is not the devaluation of the dollar. It's just a tax. If we had a sales tax on everything, 10% sales tax on everything you buy, you would spend 10% more on all the goods that you have. But it wouldn't constitute 10% inflation. When states introduce sales taxes, they're not introducing inflation. They're introducing a tax. And again, some prices will go up. Prices don't really go up, but the total out of your pocket goes up. All right. Core inflation went up as well. It went up 2.9%. All items went up 2.7%. So it's not. It doesn't bode well for dramatic decreases in interest rates that Donald Trump is fighting for and wants. There's a lot of angst in Wall Street about Trump's attacking the Fed chairman. Jamie Dimon is vocal now. This is what Jamie Dimon said. Jamie Dimon is the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. I think the independence of the Fed is absolutely critical. Playing around with the Fed can have adverse consequences, the absolute opposite of what you might be hoping for. And I think he is right not to say that Jerome Powell has done a good job. I don't think he has. Certainly didn't when inflation first arrived in the U.S. in 2022 and causing the inflation, of course, in 2021. Powell did not do a good job. But the Treasury, government, politicians would do a much worse job. Much worse job. And it's not like Trump knows how to do the job well. What he wants is reducing interest rates by 3%, which is unprecedented. It could do all kinds of damage. By the way, Bitcoin is down quite a bit today. Before we get to Bitcoin, NVIDIA is up a lot. And the NASDAQ, as a consequence, is up today in spite of the fact that the rest of the stocks are down, particularly bank stocks are down. And bank stocks are down because they were hoping for lower interest rates, which would help them. High long-term rates, low short-term rates would really help banks. It doesn't look like that's going to happen anytime soon. But NVIDIA, the CEO of NVIDIA met with Trump. And who knows what transpired exactly. But today, the Trump administration announced, as the NVIDIA CEO was visiting Beijing, that they will lift the restrictions on sale of NVIDIA microprocessors to China. So you remember there was a whole big deal about we don't want to sell China NVIDIA's, H20 chips because it's a national security issue, and China will catch up with us on AI, and this is really dangerous, and we can't let the Chinese get away with this, and we have to protect ourselves from China. Well, that lasted, just a few months until the NVIDIA CEO somehow managed to get to Trump and convince him that whatever the national security reasons, they weren't good. And now the United States is allowing NVIDIA to sell chips to China freely. And as a consequence, NVIDIA stock has really taken a huge bump upwards and is now the first stock ever to reach $4 trillion. NVIDIA now is the largest company in the world. Those of you invested in NVIDIA have made a lot of money. The H200, not the H20 or the H20, whatever they would not allow NVIDIA to sell before, they're now allowing NVIDIA to sell. So you kind of wonder how much thought goes into allowing or not allowing a company to sell stuff to China if within a few months they reverse course because the CEO meets with the president and, I don't know, makes a contribution. Who knows what happens in the background? Or maybe just told Trump, if you buy NVIDIA stock now and then you announce it, you'll make a lot of money because the NVIDIA stock will go up and you could buy options and you could leverage that and you can make a fortune. So I guess, who knows what actually happened? I have no idea. But the reality is that NVIDIA stock has gone through the roof. $4 trillion, and as a consequence, NASDAQ generally, tech stocks up today with NVIDIA leading the way. Finally, yesterday we talked about Bitcoin, and we talked about this, strategy that the company called Strategy has. And there's a good piece on this by Matt Levin. Matt Levin writes for Bloomberg, and he's very good on financial issues. He has a daily column basically, and it's always interesting. He has an interesting perspective of it, and I think this is a really good observation. We talked about it a little bit yesterday, but he gives more color to what is going on, so I thought I'd cover it. So he says, the basic situation is that the U.S. stock market will pay $2 for $1 worth of cryptocurrency. If a small company has 100 million pot of Bitcoin or Ethereum or Trump coin or what have you, its stock will be worth 200 million. Now, this trade is baffling and magical. True. It was pioneered by MicroStrategy, which now calls itself Strategy, and which has about $70 billion of Bitcoin and a 138 billion equity market capitalization. So anybody who buys Strategy is buying a piece of the 70 billion for double that. And he continues, and is now regularly and successfully imitated by all sorts of random small companies. He says, I make fun of this a lot, but it is worth asking what it means that the stock market will pay $2 for $1 worth of crypto. I mean, you could just go and buy the crypto. Why would you pay $2 for something worth $1 when you can just go buy the dollar? So he says, what does this mean? So he says, in principle, there are three categories of answers. Three categories of answers. Right? One, a Bitcoin in the hands of a crypto treasury company, which is what Strategy is really worth more than a Bitcoin in your hands because the treasury company can do stuff with the Bitcoin that you could not easily do. Therefore, the premium is justified for business reasons. That's an explanation. Second, there are vast pools of institutional capital that, one, want to own Bitcoin, but two, can't own Bitcoin directly or through futures or exchange-traded funds or other more normal and lower premium mechanisms. Therefore, the premium is justified for market segmentation reasons. Crypto treasury companies are getting paid a durable premium for bringing crypto to institutional investors in a form that they can invest in. Three, retail investors are lazy and are confused and buy hyped crypto treasury stocks without understanding the enormous premium they are paying for crypto exposure. Therefore, the premium is justified for meme reasons. So number three is it's a bubble, right? This is Matt Levine going on. Every crypto treasury company says some version of number one. It will do stuff with crypto. Now just hold it. But I've never found it particularly compelling. As what stuff? What are you doing? How are you creating value? Number three, a lot of retail makes a lot of intuitive sense, and I've written a version of it. Right? He was written in the past. The obvious appeal of the crypto treasury strategy for most small U.S. public companies is probably along the lines of nobody is paying attention to our tiny company, but if we announce we're buying a big pot of crypto, retail traders will get excited and overpay for our stock. And my guess is, from my history in trading stocks and my history from the dot-com bubble, absolutely, that plays a role. That bubble mentality is there. There's no question about that. But then he goes on. But number two is the interesting one. If the story is giant asset managers want Bitcoin exposure and Strategy is the only convenient way for them to get Bitcoin exposure, so they're willing to pay 100% premium to buy Strategy and get Bitcoin exposure, then that's super weird. And yet may be true. When I look at Strategy shareholders list on Bloomberg, the second biggest holder is Capital Group, the big active mutual fund manager, with 6.99% of the stock. Is this a good holding for Capital? Well, it's up about 175% over the last 12 months versus about 13% for the S&P 500. So, yeah. Should capital just buy Bitcoin instead of paying 100% premium to hold Bitcoin through strategy? Maybe, but it's a moot point. Capital's biggest holding of strategy is through its Growth Fund of America, which invests primarily in common stocks and also invests primarily in common stocks and may also invest in other equity-type securities, but doesn't seem to have Bitcoin or Bitcoin ETFs in its mandate. If you are a long-only equity mutual fund and your investment thesis is I should buy Bitcoin, then over the last year, you were right, and two, you weren't allowed to buy Bitcoin. So maybe strategy has the best practical way to implement this thesis. So one thesis of strategy's premium could be something like institutional equity investors will come to demand Bitcoin in stock form faster than strategy can sell it to them. Another related but slightly different thesis, something like index funds will be forced to buy strategy at whatever the premium is, because it'll be part of an index because it's big enough. Capital is the second biggest strategy shareholder, but Bloomberg's Vildana Hydrick reports on the biggest. That's the author. Bitcoin is not appropriate for long-term investors. This is from the article in Bloomberg. Also, digital assets are more speculation and less an investment. And they're an immature asset class with little history and no inherent economic value that can wreak havoc on portfolios. Vanguard executives channeling the logic of venerable Jack Bogle have made their opinion on crypto clear. Yet thanks to the cold logic of index investing, the $10 trillion money management giant is now the biggest backer of strategy, the software firm that famously reinvented itself as a proxy for Bitcoin and became a poster child for the industry's ambition. In other words, Vanguard is owning them because they own an index. An index, they want to own everything. And so they own this. And which is stunning. It's just stunning. They're paying double the price of the value of their assets. With the asset not being income producing assets, with the assets not being deployed into anything. Anyway, Levin continues to say, right, yesterday I made fun of a crypto treasury company whose treasury will be filled with hype tokens. The name here is particularly on the nose, I wrote. But I make fun of regular old companies sometimes too, right? So, I mean, it really is bubbly. It really feels like a bubble when you can have a hype token and people buy it. And a company is just going to hold these hype tokens and you could buy shares in this company at a premium. And the tokens are worth what and why are they worth it? I mean, I kind of get the argument for Bitcoin, but there are all these other tokens that probably make no sense. So it strikes me that it's likely that the whole crypto market is in a bubble, even if Bitcoin is not. Although Bitcoin is super volatile, and as long as it is super volatile, can't really serve as money. I mean, imagine buying a product yesterday with Bitcoin, the vendor receiving the Bitcoin and thinking he just received, let's say, $150,000. And let's say today he pays his vendors for the product that you bought, and Bitcoin is worth, I don't know how much it's dropped, but let's say $120,000, this particular product. Now that Bitcoin that he got yesterday, which was worth 150, is now worth 120. I mean, it's too volatile to be money. Which is a problem. All right, but I'm sure there'll be more to come on Bitcoin, and I've noticed a number of people have unsubscribed to my channel because I don't get Bitcoin, and people are condemning me online for being committed to old theories of money that have now supposedly been disproven by new theories of money, by modern theories of money, by new people. And I don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about money. All right, maybe, maybe. I can only tell you what I know and what I'm pretty confident in. And I'm pretty confident that the theory of money, the basic theory of money, has not changed. Not changed. And either Bitcoin ultimately fits into that idea of money, or Bitcoin will not become money. So I am up on subscribers in spite of people leaving. More people are joining, and the simple reason is this is a secret of the last week or so, where we've seen a nice little small spike in subscribers. Guess what topic has driven the big subscriber increase, or the relatively big subscriber increase? I mean, I've got a PhD in finance, but I still could be wrong. I could be. What do you think has driven the spike in it? I'm just curious about those people who think I'm wrong, how much they've really thought it through, how much they've read about finance, money, the nature of money, where it comes from, or whether they've read one book. I'm reading now a book which is very convincing about Bitcoin. The best book I've read so far on Bitcoin. And yeah, it would be easy to read that book and say, yeah, I'm convinced 100%. This makes complete sense. Unless you've also read another 20 books on money and you're saying, well, but that doesn't quite make sense. And why would that work? And yeah, I don't quite get that. And you haven't really explained that. And you certainly haven't proved this. So again, I might be wrong on Bitcoin, and that I wouldn't put the probability at all at zero. It's definitely a positive probability. But before people jump up and declare that there's no question at all about the nature of Bitcoin and the nature of money and so on, before they declare that, and I don't know what I'm talking about, I just wonder how much they've actually studied it, how much they've read about it, other than maybe 3 books all advocating for Bitcoin and explaining it all, and that's it, and not read widely, but which is my guess, right? What was I saying before that? Oh yeah, what was the topic? What do you think the topic is that has got me a bump in the number of subscribers? Because we are very, very, very close. We're under 100 away from 40,000. So we will make 40,000 potentially this month, which is sooner than I thought. So what do you think? What do you think has driven this? We're 39,915. We added another 12 so far today. Maybe some of you will become subscribers. Maybe we'll add a few more, although that's unlikely. My live shows do not generate a lot of subscribers. What do you think generated the subscribers? It's not the Bitcoin stuff. It's not Epstein. It's Javier Milei. I mean, my Milei video is generated, a Christian has cut up the Milei stuff that I did into 3 short videos on Milei, not 1-minute videos, like 8, 9, 10 minute. Those are the ones that really count, the 8-minute videos. And I've got like 3 Milei videos, 8-minute videos, and those videos have generated all the subscriptions we've got. So it is Milei. So I'm excited. I wish there were more topics like that I could talk about that would pick up new subscribers. Don't know what they will be. Don't know what the next one will be that will do that. If anybody has any ideas, suggestions on topics geared towards picking up more subscribers, let me know. But that one did well, and we're only 85 away from 40,000. So again, if you it wasn't air conditioning. Air conditioning got a little bit of subscribers, yeah, but Milei, much more. All right, switching topics. National Public Radio, NPR. NPR is all over the country. It is funded, not exclusively, but to a large extent by the government. It gets money, I guess, from PBS. PBS distributes to NPR, or is it NPR that distributes to all its stations? PBS and NPR as an entity get a lot of money, $1.1 billion in the last budget. And there is a bill in front of the Senate now. It's already passed the House to basically cut $9.4 billion in spending cuts. This is finally some spending cuts, actual spending cuts. It's got $9.4 billion in spending cuts that the Office of Management and Budget have asked for, that the Trump administration have asked for. The spending cuts are partially for foreign assistance programs. So this is the real cuts behind the Doge, USAID, and to cut money that Congress has already approved, $1.1 billion, for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which is the entity behind NPR and PBS, and allocates money to them. So I have been arguing for cutting. I mean, this is particularly egregious because I think this is a violation of free speech. The government should not have a broadcasting entity. It should not be funding broadcasting. It should not be favoring one kind of broadcaster over another. And given that NPR is so leftist and always has been, it has always been amazing to me how Republicans have never cut it, have never cut the funding to it. And I'm not talking about cutting, eliminate. This would eliminate the funding for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, and they would have to rely on contributions from you. And so it was stunning that, for example, during the Bush administration, they had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they didn't cut it. The first Trump administration had the House, Senate, and Trump, and they didn't cut it. And finally, it appears that they are going to actually cut this. Some Republicans are worried about their local radio stations and, humming and hawing, and they're so afraid. They're such cowards. They're so afraid, right? There's still other issues like Mitch McConnell has raised concern about cuts to foreign assistance programs that are included in this, including the HIV/AIDS program, and as has Senator Collins. So they're not on board yet with the whole package. But it does look like the PBS NPR defunding and the defunding of much of some of the foreign aid programs will happen. Again, it passed the House. There's a chance that it'll pass here. There was some issues about, rural radio stations. For example, Mike Rounds, Republican from South Dakota. It turns out that this money also funds the radio station of the Native Americans in the state, which is necessary for emergency services to get announcements out there. So he has negotiated with the Trump administration that they allocate some other money for that. So he's going to vote for this. So you can see how the pressure groups from every angle, as if you can't find money at the state level. Why can't the state of South Dakota allocate money if it's so important for state emergencies to the Native American, radio station? Or why can't it get contributions? But no, it becomes a federal issue, and Senate and senators fight over this stuff. So anyway, there's a good chance that for the first time since the establishment, I think, of NPR and PBS, they will now be funded by the federal government, which I think is super exciting. Super exciting. All right, we've talked in the past about Trump's attacks on law firms. We went through some of the lawsuits, if you remember, and we had about 10 firms that actually settled with Trump and committed to spending hundreds of millions of dollars on Trump-approved causes in order for Trump to drop the lawsuits. About four firms actually went on to fight the Trump administration in court, and so far have won. And they won their cases. Their cases were easy to win. There's nothing in the role of the executive of the president of the United States that should and does allow you to sue law firms you don't like. This is one of attacking the law firms, one of the most egregious attacks on rights and on freedom and on liberty and really on freedom of speech and on the freedom to engage a lawyer, to fight for your cause, which is speech. This is a real First Amendment issue. I mean, Trump's attack on the law firms was one of the most egregious things he did in the presidency, and sad that it got so little attention. Well, the good news is that the American Bar Association has now sued the Trump administration. They brought a lawsuit against the administration, suing them, seeking preemptive relief that prohibits Trump from taking any further action against law firms across the country. It's an 85-page complaint that the ABA outlines in painful detail all the intimidation tactics that the White House has used to break the independence of the legal profession. The ABA asked the court to issue an order protecting lawyers throughout the U.S. by prohibiting Trump from using those tactics in the future. Now, this would be amazing if a judge rules this, and I think they should, and I think it's constitutionally responsible to do this. Again, I consider this a major issue. This is an issue related to free speech directly. I mean, for example, some of the firms that are being attacked by Trump, the reason they're under attack by Trump is because they have represented immigrants who are challenging Trump's immigration policy. Or these are firms that were on the side of vindicating the 2020 election and rejected the Stop the Steal campaign. These are firms that might be representing women and LGBTQ individuals targeted by Trump's anti-transgender policies. Whether you agree with the policy or not, people should be able to disagree. We live in a free society, supposedly. Free speech is core to that, and people should be able to bring a lawsuit, win or lose. And you don't go after the lawyers for agreeing to represent them. That's just authoritarian as it gets. Others hired or rehired attorneys from the government who worked on the investigations of Trump while he was out of office. Made donations to candidates that Trump dislikes. Free speech, political speech is at the core of that. And yet he wants to silence political speech of lawyers. And those who advocate diversity in the legal profession, like firms that have DEI policies. And Trump's against DEI. So sue their law companies. Ban them from federal court. Do all kinds of things to them. I mean, that is really evil. Really anti-American. Really authoritarian. And incredibly destructive. So, it is great. I mean, there are law firms out there. There are reports of law firms out there that are scrubbing their websites of anything that Trump might find offensive. So now we have no freedom of speech. If we offend Trump, there are consequences. I mean, this is exactly how authoritarianism gains not just a foothold, but gains a stranglehold on a culture. So, this is a lawsuit I'll be watching. I hope they win. We can ask some of our lawyers as we have them on the show what they think of this. But I really do think that what Trump did with the law firms and still doing with law firms is one of the worst things he's done, maybe the worst thing he's done, and it needs to be curtailed one way or the other. All right, let's bring you up to speed on some stuff going on in Israel, both politically and from a defense perspective. So politically, there is a real chance that the Netanyahu government will fall and they will have to go to a new election. And the thing that is really splitting the coalition government right now is this question of whether the ultra-Orthodox should be drafted into the army or not. Should be drafted into the army or not. Now, I'm against a draft. I'm even against a draft in Israel. But if you have a draft, you can't exclude one group of people just because they're religious. Religion is not a standard by which anybody should be excluded. You shouldn't get preferential treatment because you're religious. Indeed, you should be deemed irrational and be viewed with skepticism. The ultra-Orthodox in Israel leech off of the state. They are completely subsidized. They're educational institutions that do not educate kids. They teach them the Bible and pretty much nothing else. They don't educate properly, are completely 100% funded by the government. So everybody else has to follow a particular curriculum, a secular curriculum. But not these schools. These schools get to teach only the things they want to teach, which are of little value, and they get fully subsidized by the government. Many of the families within the Orthodox community are on welfare, and they're all welfare because the men don't work, the men study all day, the women work and raise the family and take care of the home. The responsibility of the man is to pray and to study. That's it. And particularly after October 7th, the Israelis are saying, wait a minute, our sons and daughters are fighting in Gaza, Lebanon, Iran, to keep everybody in Israel safe. They are drafted into the military. Your sons and daughters are not. You're free riding off of us. And it's not like it's a volunteer army. No, this is not voluntary. And the ultra-Orthodox, so there is a bill to basically force the ultra-Orthodox to serve in the Israeli military, or to at least do, this is typical status stuff, at least do some community service or something while Israeli kids the same age serve in the military. And, some ultra-Orthodox do serve. Indeed, there was a case about a week ago where 5 soldiers were killed in Gaza. Those 5 soldiers were all ultra-Orthodox. They were in a special unit that was of ultra-Orthodox soldiers. So they fight, and they're in the military, but it's a small percentage. It's a small percentage. There is a bill that would codify broad military draft exemptions, right, for them, still give them exemptions, but it would limit them. It would limit those exemptions much more than they would like. And 2 of the ultra-Orthodox political parties have already resigned from the government. I think a 3rd might resign today. That could lead to the fall of the government and a new election, which I think, as I've said many times, would be a good thing. I think Israel needs a new election post-October 7th, post everything that's happened, and it needs a reckoning. But so it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next few days in Israel. Israeli politics are some of the dirtiest, hardest to understand, most, what do you call it? I guess one of the things about in the U.S., everything is done so politely and behind the scenes and quietly. Like, to what extent were arms twisted? We know, to get the big, beautiful bill passed. I mean, to a large extent. In Israel, we would hear about the name calling and the yelling and the arguments and the threats, and you would hear all of that. All of that would be out in the open. All of that would be leaked. You would know every little detail of all the arm twisting and everything else that was going on, the yelling, the screaming, again, the threats, and a lot of threats going on. So Israeli politics is always exciting like this. Anyway, at the same time that Israel is dealing with this political crisis, there is also a crisis at its northern border. In spite of the fact that Trump has now basically lifted sanctions on Syria, is trying to treat Syria as a normal country, and has suggested that Syria is going to, join the Abraham Accords, and that Syria is going to sign a peace treaty with Israel. There were also talks last week about the fact that as part of this peace deal with Syria, that the southern part of Syria would be demilitarized, that the Syrian military would not be allowed to carry heavy weapons into the southern areas of Syria. Well, what has happened over the last few days is that Syria has actually moved heavy weapons into the south, not targeting Israel, but targeting Israel's allies in Syria, the Druze. The Druze, I've told you before, are not exactly Muslim. They're kind of a secret religion, derivative from Islam. But you see, the people running Syria used to be members of ISIS. They are fundamentalist Sunnis who hate anybody who's not a fundamentalist Sunni. They hate the Shiites, they hate the Kurds, they hate the Druze. They keep trying to eliminate, basically massacre, the remnants of Bashar al-Assad's, the people of his tribe who are Shiite. Anyway, it looks like the Syrian government has moved against the Druze. In the south, led by, I guess, Sunni Bedouin are nomads in the south of Syria. There's been fighting between the Sunni Bedouin and the Druze, and then the Syrian military stepped in, probably in the side of the Sunni Bedouin. And this has led to clashes. Over 100 people were killed on Sunday and Monday of this week. As a consequence of those clashes, as I said, Syrian militaries moved in, including tanks and other heavy equipment. Israel, which has basically promised to protect the Druze in southern Syria from the Syrian government, has basically used its air force to take out the tanks. And you can see pictures online of Israel shooting Syrian government, Syrian army tanks, troop carriers, and other heavy equipment in the south. And Israel has basically said, if you move military equipment into the south, we will destroy it. We are going to defend the Druze. In the meantime, clashes between the Druze and the Syrian government and these Bedouin continue and are continuing today. The twist on the story came a few minutes ago. Where did I see this? I had this story. Maybe it's here. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, the twist came a few minutes ago, like an hour ago, when Israel announced that it was suspending airstrikes against the Syrian army because Trump had requested it. So Trump is now taking the side of Syria opposite Israel and the Druze, and preventing Israel from participating in defense of their own allies in southern Syria. So it's hard to tell exactly what's going on here. It's hard to tell where this is going to lead us, where we're going to end up with this. But it's a mess. And Syria was always going to be a mess. And that's why all the optimism around a peace deal with Syria, and, Syria's going to agree to cede the Golan Heights, and everything's going to be amazing between Israel and Syria, always seemed a little hyped to me. And it's going to be interesting. Israel has promised to protect the Jews. And I find it hard to believe that Israel will renege on that promise, even if Trump asks them to. But you never know. You never know. They're very beholden to Trump. All right. I think that's my... just I'll note a few other things about Israel that are relevant. I keep reading about apartments blowing up in Iran, in Tehran, and other places in Iran. It does seem that on the quiet, Israel is probably, I don't know how much probability to place on this. It seems credible, but I don't know how credible and hard to tell how. It could be gas leaks and blowing up, and now people are noticing it, whereas before they didn't notice it. I don't know. But it does seem suspicious. And it does seem like the Mossad, the Israeli Mossad, continues to take out leadership figures within Iran, nuclear scientists, military figures, on the quiet, without taking responsibility, without admitting it, without escalating. And it does seem like Iran is not really making a big deal out of this because they don't want to escalate it into a war with Israel. So everybody's keeping quiet about it. But it does appear, at least, that Israel is still active in Iran, taking out significant leadership within Iran. It's also true that there's a lot of activity vis-a-vis Hezbollah in Lebanon. Israel is taking out a lot of some senior leadership just recently, and it's taking out warehouses. It's taking out anything in the south that looks suspicious. Israel's very active in continuing to make sure that Hezbollah stays weak. And we're seeing slowly the Lebanese government become more and more emboldened in challenging Hezbollah, which is what you ultimately want. You want the Lebanese government to take control over Lebanon and ultimately demilitarize Hezbollah, take away their weapons. Okay, Russia, as we talked about yesterday, Trump is now pivoted to providing Ukraine with not only defensive weapons like the Patriot missiles, but also offensive weapons. There is talk about providing the Ukrainians with long-range variant of the ATACMS that can reach 200 miles and allow them to launch it into Russia, not just into the areas occupied by the Russian forces in Ukraine, which is what Biden restricted them to. There's also talk about potentially, right, the United States selling or providing Ukraine with Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles. Those have a range of over 1,000 miles that could easily reach Moscow. In a conversation between Trump and Zelensky, supposedly, Trump was urging Zelensky to attack Moscow, and he was asking him why he wasn't, and Zelensky basically said, because we don't have the weapons to do it. And Trump now seems to be ready to facilitate those weapons. Again, these are weapons that are being bought by NATO, bought by the Europeans, and then shipped to Ukraine, not weapons that are given to Ukraine free of charge. And as we talked about yesterday, Trump is also threatening massive tariffs on Russia if they don't reach a peace deal with Ukraine within 50 days. Of course, we know that those kind of ultimatums have this creeping quality. They 50 days turns into 60, 70, who knows what. Trump has also talked about secondary tariffs. So these are tariffs on people who buy stuff, penalties on people who buy stuff from Russia. We're talking about the potential or the attempt to basically embargo Russia, to seal Russia off from being able to sell anything to China, to India, to anybody else. So it'll be interesting to see if this is ever implemented. The White House has used secondary tariffs before. It implemented a 25% levy on purchases of Venezuelan oil in March. I don't know how that's put into practice and how effective that was. And I'm not sure why you would do that on Venezuela. I don't like Venezuela, but Venezuela is not a threat to the United States. There's zero reason to embargo Venezuela. There's lots of reasons to, or Cuba for that matter, lots of reasons to embargo Russia. But so it's going to be interesting to see if Russia's oil is taken off the world market, which would be quite a feat. That's 7 million barrels a day. Price of oil would go up a lot. You could probably increase production by Saudi Arabia and even in the U.S. to ultimately catch up, but there would be higher prices for a while if that was actually achieved, if they'd actually pull that off. So yeah, I mean, Trump seems to getting serious about Russia for whatever that is worth. All right, looks like yeah. All right, that is off. That's all I want. All right. Where are we? China. China's. I thought this would be interesting. Before we do that, we've just hit the first hour. We're still way behind on our target for the first hour, in spite of the fact that John got us off to an amazing start, right? $100 before we even got going, and we still haven't done the 150 beyond that to get to the 250. So I'm encouraging you to use the super chat, use the stickers to get us up to our targets. We really do need to hit these targets, and it's become a so trade. Think about it as a trade. Don't forget to make your daily contribution to Yaron Brook Show if you're listening. It could be $2, it could be $100, it could be $500, but whatever it is, make that contribution now, either as a question or as a sticker. China is now rolling out a digital ID system that it will require all its citizens to have, which will allow the Chinese government to monitor everything its citizens do online. They will be able to censor, survey, monitor 1 billion people who use the internet in China. So if today, when you go on a Chinese website, Alibaba or social media, and you fill out a form and you give them the information, the social media company has that info, right? And there is a law in China called the real name registration system, which does not allow you to use anonymous accounts or aliases. You have to use your real name. There was some talk of implementing such a system in the United States, which would be terrible. So today, private companies, Weibo, Alibaba, social media companies, they have the information on their users, the real names and information about them. What this new digital ID system would do is it would provide that information only to the government. And private companies would no longer have that information, which of course is information they use to market stuff to you, to sell stuff to you, to do online advertising. So it's a huge hit for private companies, but more importantly, it's a huge hit for privacy. I mean, China's already a surveillance state to a large extent. This is the next level surveillance. They will be able to track every single post you make and track it efficiently and effectively, because everything will be linked up to this centralized ID system. So I'm sure that the more tech-savvy people will find ways around this, VPN-like instruments to get around it. But it is still scary. And it's scary not just because it's happening in China. It's scary because I think you're going to hear voices in the United States, in Europe, and elsewhere calling for similar types of programs. First of all, they'll say it's to protect your privacy from being abused by private companies. right? And secondly, they'll cite security, hate speech, all kinds of other reasons why it's important for the government to monitor what happens on social media and monitor what happens everywhere else. So China is at the forefront of the surveillance state, of the technologies of the surveillance state, but that does not mean that other countries are not watching and learning and not eager to implement similar techniques to track their citizens. So, yeah, we got to watch out for digital IDs, digital government-run digital currency. There are a lot of things that the internet allows them to monitor what you do, what you say, who you say it to, when, where, everything, in ways that our lives in the material world are not quite as easily tractable. It's very difficult to put listening devices in every room in your home, every room in everybody's home, in every corner of every park, and much harder. But on the internet, it's easy once they can standardize tracking you and knowing that they're tracking you and following everything because the listening device is already built into the internet. Scary stuff. I feel sorry for the Chinese. All right, finally, this is just cool, right? Just a cool story. So in the UK, they now have accumulated 100,000, scans, body scans, full body MRI scans of 100,000 people from head to toe. It's the world's largest whole body imaging project. They are combining this, this detailed data of hearts, brains, abdomens, blood vessels, bones, joints. They're combining that with data on your genome, all anonymized, of course, but on the genome, data on health and on lifestyle. And, this is the kind of data this is the kind of projects and data that is going to be incredibly important for kind of the next stages in healthcare, in understanding of how our genes affect different things, of how that's connected to disease and connected to lifestyle, connected to all these things. So it's a giant healthcare project. I'm sure it's heavily involved with the NHS. It's UK Biobank, but it is private researchers doing this. This is the chief scientist at UK Biobank says, for the first time, researchers can study how we age and how disease develop in stunning detail and at a massive scale. And think about all of that with an overlay of AI, right? An AI that can scan 100,000 records, can find relationships, causal relationships between different factors that they're looking at, between the MRI scan and between the health records and between everything else. So, these are the kind of things in health that excite me. I do this health nucleus thing or human longevity. And I don't know how many clients they have, but they must have now a significant amount of records. They get my genome they've got my genome, they've got my health history, they've got my scan, they've got multiple scans. And part of the business model of this company and other companies that are now competing with them is to find relationships and to find, new relationships and to sell the information to drug companies, biotech companies, and others to be able to produce the next generation of stuff. That is the news for Tuesday, July 15th. Thank you for joining us. We are going to turn to a super chat in a minute. Let me just thank Observateur Push, who just came with $100. He says, trading, I got a better deal. This is a good deal for me in terms of the trade. I love it. $100. Thank you, Observateur Push. We also got a sticker from Mike and from RDF and from John Bales and from, where are we going? Up here. Yep. Let's see. Who else? We got stickers, and then we're going to go to the Super Chat questions. All right, so that is the stickers. So thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Thank you, Observator Push. You got us to our first hour goal. Now we've got to work for our second hour goal, right? We got to work for that 5 o'clock Eastern time. That's another $140. No, it's not another $140. It's another $193. $193 to get to that goal. So start thinking about questions you want to ask, or stickers you want to do, or you want to participate in a trade. Let's do a trade. All right. Reminder that one of the best ways to support the Yaron Brook Show is on Patreon. You can make a monthly contribution there. It's automated. It's automatic. I'm trying to grow my Patreon subscribers. I like it. Particularly, this show is, after all, funded by listeners, by you guys. Predictability helps a lot in terms of knowing that I can keep doing the show. And so the Patreon is a great way to do that. You can also do it on PayPal. I think it's a little easier for you to do it on Patreon. But either way, PayPal or Patreon, just go Yaron Brook Show and make a monthly contribution on either one of those platforms. Pretty easy. Credit cards and so on. By the way, I am looking into taking contributions from you guys in Bitcoin. And I'm hoping to do that through PayPal. PayPal has the capacity to handle contributions through Bitcoin. So I'm hoping that within a week or so, we will have that capability built into PayPal. We will see. We're working on it. All right, we've got 3 sponsors working on 4, 5, and 6. Or 4, 5 at least. Who's the 6th? At least 2 more sponsors. I'm hoping will come on board soon. But we've got Hendershot Wealth Management that is has a product that works really, really well for people who have a large amount of capital gains and do not want to pay taxes on it. And this is a technique to defer those taxes and to cancel out the gains in ways that allow you to not lose money, still make money, but defer paying the taxes. And deferral is everything. If you can defer capital gains taxes significantly, then you're paying when you pay them with a lot less than what if you were to pay them over time. Remember, any dollar you don't pay in taxes today, and instead you pay it in 10 years, that's a dollar that you have in your portfolio to grow. So in 10 years, that dollar becomes $3, and only then do you pay capital gains. But you've, in the meantime, made all that money on it. So deferring capital gains is huge. So I encourage you to go to Hendershot Wealth Management, Hendershot wealthmanagement.com/YBS, and that this particular product will be the first thing you see on the page. You can also, you can set up a conversation with Robert Hendershot to talk about the product itself. Robert is my former business partner, somebody I trust completely. And you can also find the interview with me and Robert on YouTube. In my channel, there's a playlist called Sponsors, and it's right there in the playlist, and you can watch it. So watch the interview. If you think the product is appropriate for you, go to the website, sign up, and get an interview. Nothing to lose, no hard sales tactics. If it makes sense, great. If it doesn't make sense, that's okay. Alex Epstein is the world's expert on energy, electricity, power, grid, all of that stuff crucial to our civilization, crucial to life in America, on Earth. It is a, and he is now lobbying as well in Washington, D.C. to get more free market, more pro-growth, pro-energy, pro-flourishing and abundance laws and programs passed, get rid of all the subsidies for junk. And you can follow his work, learn from his insights, become a better communicator with his talking points by going to alexepstein.substack.com and subscribing. Just takes a subscription. And finally, the Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor, and they are eager to get you to come to next year's OCON. It's going to be in New Orleans. New Orleans. We're going to have fun with jazz and a lot of really good food. And of course, the conference itself will have a bunch of great speakers. It's the 250th birthday of the United States of America, and we will be celebrating that, even though it's not on the 4th of July. It's just before the 4th of July. We'll still have talks about it and celebrations. We'll be, lots of social events, poker, and stuff. So sign up. You can get a 30% discount if you do so now. And on top of that 30%, you get an extra 10% for being a YBS listener, which gives you a total discount of 37%. Now, a lot of, you can cancel this and still get your money back. Not forever, but there's a time period where you can cancel and get your money back. So I highly encourage you to go and register now. And then if something comes up and you can't go, you can cancel. But at least get the discount. Don't wait till the last minute to sign up when the discount is a goner. All right. Oh, Chandler didn't know I was a professor. I was a professor, an award-winning professor. I think that's what my bio says. All right. Again, reminder, ask questions, do stickers, support the Yaron Brook Show right here on YouTube. It's a great way to show your support and to trade with me. It's a great way to help me grow this channel so we can have growing influence on the world. And it's, again, a great way for you to just pay for the values that you consume. John has a 5-part question. Let's start. There's no I there. Was union activity in the late 19th century, 20th century, actually protecting rights? Or were they just fighting harsh conditions that, while unpleasant, didn't involve coercion or rights violations? I'd say for the most part, it wasn't an issue of rights violations. But there probably was some attempt by business leaders who, they didn't have the ability, they didn't have this sensibility maybe to pay workers appropriately. And it might have made sense for workers to voluntarily unionize in order to challenge businesses and see if they could get a better deal. Now, sadly, these things often, or didn't often, a few times, devolved into violence, whether that violence was initiated by the unions or whether in some cases that violence was initiated by the companies. Inappropriate in any case. But I think that the unions had a place, again, particularly at the beginning of capitalism, particularly at the beginning of the creation of big businesses, where everybody's trying to figure out exactly how it all works and how, what is the allocation going to be and what are reasonable wages going to be. So I think there was a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes were made, but overall, things were good. Overall, productivity increased and things progressed positively. There was a lot of negative writings about this period with regard to unions and with regard to the battles between unions and employers. But a lot of it is false. A lot of the history has been challenged by historians, more recently, by economists who have gone back and looked at the data and looked at actually what happened. And there's a lot of mythology about the violence, particularly the violence initiated by businessmen. So it was a lot less of what they say it was. Conditions were a lot better than what they argue they were. But there was a certain tug of war while everything, needed to be figured out between unions and employers, which was legit. But it wasn't like unions were protecting rights, because it wasn't like employers, again, with some exceptions, were using force against them. It was unions were just trying to negotiate a better deal. It was more of a business issue than it was a rights issue. John says, what about child labor? Is it a valid exception to capitalism since children don't have full context or rational capacity to consent to labor contracts, especially in dangerous conditions? Well, I mean, children have parents. It's the parents' responsibility to make sure that their children are not being exploited. And I assume it's the parents who negotiated some of the salaries. Again, unions could have become handy in doing that, but I don't think there were rights violations with regard to children. Although I'm sure, again, there were some abusive cases and some cases that were inappropriate. But child labor disappeared once parents became rich enough to move their kids out of the factory and into schools. And, once it became profitable for the business owner to replace children with machines. After all, children are not particularly productive workers. It's not easy to manage them. And I'm sure that business owners were eager to replace children with machines or with adults as quickly as they could. All right. Let's see. What are you guys talking about? Apollo Zeus is spreading lies about me. Don't believe him. Don't believe him. John, part 3. Did mining companies or factories violate rights if they withheld critical safety info from workers that they knew about? Or was it still a voluntary risk, assuming no force of fraud? I'm assuming it's a violation if they lied. It's certainly a violation if they lied. And if they misrepresented a workplace as safe when it wasn't, or if they withheld information that they had really good reason to believe that would stop miners from working the mine if they knew it. That is, if they were putting the lives of miners in danger in ways that the miners were not aware of and could not be aware of, that would be a rights violation. That would be wrong. Absolutely. And the miners should be able to sue them for that. Right. John continues, should we consider it a rights violation if the government used police to break up peaceful protests? I'm guessing it's dependent on whether the land is private or public. I believe police use physical force in both instances. I mean, this is the problem. I think in those days, there was a lot less tolerance of demonstrations, which is right. That is, I don't think it's right to be able to demonstrate on anybody's land except yours. So if the union rented out a piece of land, an auditorium, or a private park, or something, and held a demonstration there, I don't think anybody broke it up. But if the union was blocking passage into the factory, then that's a violation of, the public space that people should be allowed to use, and a violation of the factory owner's rights over the factory. So the unions were in violation of rights by demonstrating outside. And if the only way to stop that rights violation was by using force, then the police were completely justified in using force. You cannot block an entrance into a private property. You cannot stop people from going to work. And the fact that they are so-called scabs doesn't matter. You don't have a right to define who goes to work and who doesn't. If the employer and these people came to some kind of agreement that facilitated their working, why is it any of your business? Now, it's your business because you believe that they're taking your jobs away. But that is not an excuse to violate the right of association, the right of contract, the right of movement of these employees. All right, I see Apollo Zeus did a sticker to compensate for the lies he was telling on the chat. That's good. All right, let's see. Just another reminder that we're well into the second hour, and we're still way short of our goal. All right, John, Fifth question. Company towns are often criticized, but wasn't everything voluntary? Isn't the outrage rooted in the false idea that people have a right to outcome, not just freedom of action? Yes, absolutely. And company towns were a lot less worse, were nowhere near as bad as people describe them to be. Again, there was a whole campaign in the late 19th century to make companies look bad, to make business look bad, and to paint businesses as exploitative and rights violating and evil and bad. And the progressives led this intellectually with the goal and aim of ultimately, regulating, really regulating these businesses. So a lot of the stories are just wrong about what happened in these company towns and the supposed curse of nature of them, and so on. If you do a decent Google search, you will find the kind of corrective history that more modern historians have written about all these phenomena: the Cold Wars, the strikes, the company towns, and there just isn't any reason to believe that businessmen were as abusive as the progressives and their acolytes and the people influenced by them were trying to suggest in the 19th century. It just didn't happen. Jeffrey, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate it. That Doodle Bunny, part one, also a two-part question. Wow. In regards to the question about the Matrix game, I didn't mean to have a controller and you're staring at a screen playing a video game. I meant you're literally plugged in like they do in the movie. Yeah, I got that. Where you can make yourself king of the world and your mind and body experience it as real. Why would anyone want to return to actual reality? Well, because it's actually not real, and it's not real. And therefore, it's, first of all, being king of the world shouldn't be a goal or a value. But that nothing you do in this game actually has any consequences. You can't die. You can die in the game, but then you can just get resurrected. Values don't mean as much. And therefore, the whole way in which you function within the game and the reward, the pain-pleasure mechanism, the reward, the psychological reward and pain that you gain are not going to be as heightened, is not going to be as significant and substantial as they are in in reality. I don't know. I'm trying to think of an analogy, but this is not a perfect analogy, but it's like the difference between masturbating and having sex. Right? Masturbating's great, it's fun, it's good. But sex is just much, much, much better. And I think real life, because you are alive and you're living, and reality, everything you're doing in reality matters, it has consequences to your ability to live, changes the way you respond to the game and the way you respond to reality. You're just never going to respond to a game, to something that's not real, in the same way as you respond to reality. Just as, there's in Sleeper, there's that, you remember the movie Sleeper with Woody Allen? He goes into the machine, Orgasmatron or something. Nobody has sex in this futuristic world. They just go into the machine that gives you all the experience of sex, but you don't really have sex. It's not the same, and it cannot be the same. Simulating reality is never, you are not going to treat the simulation ever the same as you treat reality, because there's so much less at stake. So much less at stake. It's a game within reality, but it's not, so you treat it as a game, and your responses are appropriate for a game. And the values you receive and the joy and pleasure you receive and the pain and everything else you experience are appropriate for it being a game within reality, not it being you interacting with reality itself. But you can't create entire new economies in the matrix because it doesn't exist. You're not being productive. You can't eat in the matrix. You can only eat in the real world. So the physical world has a value because you are a physical being. Now, it could be that you go into some kind of matrix to collaborate with your coworkers and your work and stuff, but you have to return to the real world, and therefore the rules in this matrix have to be concurrent with the real world so that they supplement each other, they don't conflict. You can't be king in one and a nobody in the other. All right, Hopper Campbell, how much dollars for you to review Squid Game Season 2 and 3? They were absolutely phenomenal, much better than Season 1. Why is South Korea so good at producing TV shows? Aren't they fairly corrupt socialistic country? No, they're not socialist. They're mixed economy, certainly not socialist. Wouldn't call them that. And I don't think they're that corrupt. They're certainly a lot less corrupt than Trump. I mean, a lot less corrupt than most countries around the world. No, South Korea is a developed, relatively free market, amazing industry, amazing productivity country. So they have a lot going for them, So it's a very positive place. I'm not sure where you get the socialist from. How much would it cost for me to review those 2 seasons? I mean, that's a lot of time. That's a lot of time. I don't know. I mean, a couple of thousand, 1,000 each, 1,000 each season. And I have to say, I hated Season 1, right? So I do this out of curiosity, not out of the fact that I really want to go back into the universe of Squid Games, which I found despicable. Right? Everything about that show intellectually was despicable. It's an anti-life, anti-values, anti-free will, really. People are automatons. Depressing series, particularly as compared to the many of the Korean dramas that are so benevolent. Yigal, on the issue of invasive species, the common approach denies the dynamic nature of evolution and supports killing off the invasive species. Apparently, environmentalists want to enforce their idea even on nature itself. Yeah, absolutely. They have some idea about what nature is and how it is in its some kind of utopian idealistic condition. And they want it to be static, just in that place. And the fact that species evolve and species invade other territories, and the fact that man is part of nature, and that man intervening with nature is not outside of nature, it's part of nature, it's not separate from nature. They ignore all of that. Their utopia is when man is non-existent, and even then they struggle with, because species could invade other environments, all kinds of mechanisms, they just want everything to freeze. But mainly is they don't really think. Most of what motivates them is anti-man. They hate man, they hate progress. And since most invasive species invade because man brings them to the new environment, they freak out. Now, you can understand in some places why you would want to get rid of invasive species, because they are really disruptive. They're disruptive, let's say, to farmers, or disruptive to human activity of some kind. So get rid of them. But it has to be a decision humans make in the context of the human values, whether to restrict invasive species or not. Jeffrey, any chance ARI would be interested in me doing a couple dinners in New Orleans? Wow, that would be really, really, really cool. Yeah. I don't speak for ARI, so I have no clue. No clue. But let me ask the people who matter, the people who make decisions about these things. It's really, really, really a good idea. I like it. So let me inquire. All right. What did I want to do here? Just give me a second. In the meantime, I'll remind you there was still inching towards that goal. We'd like to make that goal. So think about what you can do to help make that goal possible, right? All right, Jeffrey, I just texted Carla to ask her, and she will let us know. All right, from yesterday, Robert said, what, if anything, do you think Trump's doing right? What, if anything, do I think Trump is doing right? Interesting. Very little. I mean, he's appointed some good people to some positions where they are doing good things in deregulating at the agency level. But as I've said for the last 10 years, deregulating at the agency level is fleeting. It doesn't have any kind of lasting impact. I think some of what's being done at the energy department is really, really good. So I think, Trump has appointed some good people who are doing good things. Energy, for example, is an example. But even there, it's going to be interesting to see to what extent they actually can deregulate in ways that are lasting and not fleeting. Now, they might get the help of the Supreme Court in doing so. I thought he bombed, the bombing of Iran was a good thing. I think this big, beautiful bill is a disaster. I think his attitude towards lawfare is a disaster. His attitude towards immigration is a disaster. His attitude towards tariff is a disaster on steroids. I think he's a disaster for free speech. What else? What else is he doing? He's finally come around Ukraine. In the meantime, caused a huge amount of damage and positioned Russia to maybe gain some significant successes this summer in an invasion of Ukraine, because weapons did not reach Ukraine in time. What else? Foreign policy-wise, he's alienated our allies, antagonized many of them. I don't like what he's doing with China. It's neither here nor there. It's neither tough enough nor weak. It's enough to poke them into Cold War II, but yet not strong enough to hold them back. But not weak enough to actually think about how to create a sustainable relationship with China. So it's not achieving anything. Anybody else have any ideas on anything good Trump has done? Not much, sorry. The profit. How do you balance living in the present and saving? What if you are a low salary now but have very high earning potential? Is it still worth saving in this moment? Naturally, as you earn more and spend more, is there a rule of thumb to go by? I don't think there's a rule of thumb. Although maybe if I thought about it enough, I could come up with something, but I don't have a rule of thumb. Look, it really depends on a few things. It depends on how confident you are in your earning potential. It depends on how optimistic you are about the future. It depends on, I'd say, your own self-esteem. And it depends on your willingness to take on risk. I'm a big believer in not saving much when you're young if you know that your earning potential is high and you will make a lot more money in the future. When you're young is a good time to get yourself established. You should live comfortably. You should live well. You shouldn't live beyond your means, but you should live well. And you shouldn't worry too much about savings. At some point, depending on how high your potential salary is going to be, you need to start thinking about it. You need to start putting money away, maybe sometime in your 30s. Start putting money aside. And as you achieve your kind of peak earning years, you should increase your savings more and more. And the basic calculation needs to be, I mean, I guess this is the rule of thumb. How long do I think I'll live? When do I think I'll retire, if I retire? How much money will I need when I retire in order to live well in my retirement? Will I continue to earn anything while I retire? That should factor in. What am I going to inherit? What do I expect to inherit? And how much do I think I'm going to earn in the future? What's the upside? And, you can run the numbers. You can do it in a pretty simple spreadsheet, and you can make guesses about all this. And of course, the more risk averse you are, the more conservative your estimates will be, and the earlier you will start savings. The more risk tolerant you are, the more you will delay savings. And the more you will be willing to be a little bit more aggressive in your expectations and your projections. So I think we each have to figure it out. I didn't start saving until my 40s. I mean, I'm not saying that's what you should do, but I'm saying that's what I did. I mean, raising a family and was making a decent amount of money, but I wanted to live. I wasn't going to sacrifice the present for the future. And I really did believe, and I had good reason, I think, to believe, and it worked out this way, that I would always make more money the next year than I did before, and that one day I would make quite a bit more money than I would, and I'd save then. And basically, that's what happened, right? I think that I wouldn't say I started saving a little bit through a 401k in my mid-30s, but then only really started saving in any significant way in my 40s. I also took on a lot of debt. As I've said many times before, I don't have a problem with debt. Debt is an instrument for you to use to make your life easier and more comfortable. It's a way to buy a house before you can really afford to pay cash for the house. It's a way to own a car before maybe you can pay upfront for the car. It's a way to start a business. It's a way to improve your house if you want to improve your house. There are lots of different things that you can do with loans as long as you have the confidence that you can pay them off. I didn't find loans a pain. I'm not the kind of person who worries too much about these things. I'm very, confident that I will be able to pay them off. And sometimes you have to juggle a little bit and figure out what the best rates and but okay. But there's a benefit to it. You get to use the money. You got to think about it, plan it, think about it, be realistic, and really consider your situation and what you think your situation will be in 10, 20, 30 years. Now, I'm not particularly risk averse, right? So, but I'm pretty, I'd say this, I'm I don't know if you want to call it risk averse. I believe in portfolio theory. I believe that in the long run, you're best served by investing in highly diversified assets. But how much you invest, I don't take risks on the investment side. I've taken risks in starting businesses. I've taken risks in debt that I've taken on, and I've taken risks in my daily expenditures and how much money I spend relative to how much income I have. But I think that as a finance professor who's looked at the numbers, you're generally, unless you have a lot of knowledge in a particular field, you're just better off just diversifying, heavily diversifying. And over the long run, it doesn't matter when stock markets collapse, when they go down. Over the long run, the stock market has done phenomenally well. So I'll ride the stock market over almost any other asset out there because it has an unbelievable history. Christos, do you agree with what Ayn Rand had to said on Donahue interview about a female president, that no good woman would ever want it? Not sure if you have said something about that before. I mean, look, I think this is a complicated question. It's a question that revolves around your and her view of femininity and what femininity means. I encourage you to read her essay on why a woman shouldn't be president. I forget which one of the books it's in, but you should read the essay rather than the Phil Donahue because she explains more in the essay. And I don't agree with it. I was a supporter of Nikki Haley, but I doubt that I'd win the argument with Ayn Rand. She had a lot more psychological insight than I do. Certainly a lot more psychological insight than I do into what it means to be a woman. And she had a particular view of femininity and masculinity. And that view is what led her to the belief that a woman with self-esteem, a real woman, a good woman, a rational woman of self-esteem would never want to be president. But you have to share her view of femininity. And I'm not quite at the point where I do because I don't know enough. I don't know enough to completely disagree with her. I think there's something there, but I certainly, I don't know enough to agree with her. Again, I have a sense that there's something to what she's saying, but whether I embrace it in totality, probably not. James, is it possible that MAGA coalition ends up being sustainable because the left is so pathetic? Well, yeah, I mean, MAGA will morph and adjust to a large extent to what happens on the left, because MAGA is to a large extent defined by what happens on the left, by being the anti-left rather than being a positive. Michael, for 99.9% of people in the world, is altruism not viewed as one of the many perspectives on morality? It's just morality, like 2 + 2 = 4. Yes, that's absolutely right. For I don't know if 99.9, but for an overwhelming majority of people, when you say morality, when you say ethics, what they hear is altruism or some form of altruism. Right? It could be, it's not clear that Christianity is altruism in the sense of you sacrifice to other people. It is altruism, as we understand philosophically, a sacrifice to God. But, people understand altruism in a variety of different ways. But yeah, the basic idea, yeah, everybody agrees. It's about sacrifice your interest to others. Daniel, to the extent exporting countries adjust prices to pay for tariffs, exporting countries, would they have to increase exports and to decrease imports to get dollars? To the extent exporting countries adjust prices to pay for tariffs, that is, they reduce the prices so that the importer doesn't pay the tariff, so the importer faces the same price after tariffs, then would they have to increase exports or decrease imports to get dollars? Yes. So if they wanted to have the same amount of dollars that they were getting before, they would have to increase exports or decrease imports. And it's not clear how they would increase exports since prices for the consumer haven't changed, so their demand hasn't changed. And they could decrease imports, but then they would be challenged with, what about the demand for the local population has for these foreign goods? Where does that demand go? This is what happens when you artificially try to fudge with these issues instead of letting just the market work, because it really does work beautifully. Beautifully. Roland, here are some Swiss francs. It makes a lot better money than Bitcoin. The Swiss franc is good money. Relatively speaking, Swiss franc has done really well, in spite of negative interest rates. Frank, you are not going to like the new Superman movie. Shapiro and others can't stand it. No character development. Also, why can't NPR get commercial ads? They can. They just have to change their business model. So I don't know. Do you think my taste in movies is the same as Shapiro's? I doubt it very much. I doubt that Shapiro and I like the same movies. But I agree with you. I probably will hate Superman. But it's in my case, I don't think I've liked any, I've liked very few superhero movies. Very few. Frank says, who do you think the best, worst kings in Israel? Worst kings in Israel? You're talking about biblical kings? I don't know. I can't remember. I mean, Israel was split into two states with two different kings after King Solomon. King Solomon's kids couldn't agree on one king, so they had two kings, one a king of Israel and one a king of Judea. And they split the country into two. I guess there's one, yeah, and they sometimes fought. They had wars between them. But, the most prosperous kingdom was, I think, Solomon. Now, who are the worst? I don't know. I don't remember my Old Testament, that part of the Old Testament well enough. Sorry. Subikask, according to Trump, he told Melania, I had a wonderful conversation with Putin, and she responded, really, because another city's being hit. Yeah, I saw that when he said that. I mentioned that, I think, yesterday. Yes, I mean, I think it made him look bad. Even his wife was saying, what the hell? What are you doing? You're supporting this guy who keeps bombing cities in spite of you having good conversations with him? He's playing you. I think that's what shifted his strategy. Esoteric dichotomy. How broad can patents be rationally? Nintendo has patented specific game mechanisms, like catching monsters in spheres and gliding using tamed monsters. That is a question for Adam Ossoff when I have him on next. I do not know. I mean, I'm sure there are rules about how broad or how narrow they could be, but whether those particular ones are irrational or not, I do not know. You'd have to know a lot more about patents and the history and how it compares to others. But that's a great question to ask Adam Ossoff when we have him on. Roland, I guess it's altruism that makes environmentalists hate successful invasive species while wanting to save endangered species. Yeah, we don't want the invasion. We want to help. It's intersectionality is applied to species. There's the oppressors and the oppressed. And we always are with the oppressed. Endangered, that's oppressed. I guess, Michael, the final stage is coming. This is a quote. The final stage is coming, the end of the freedom of those who choose to think, because their sacrifice will be demanded to keep the insane alive by force. And I guess he continues in the next super chat. First, cognition was destroyed, then morality, then politics. If sufficient number of Americans don't choose to think. I don't know where you're quoting from that, but yeah, I mean, I don't know if the final stage is coming. I mean, I read Ayn Rand, and she's predicting the end in 1974 because it looks a lot bleaker than it even looks today. So I don't know. The United States has this amazing ability to recover. But yeah, if things don't change, we're heading towards a decline of civilization, elevation of force and coercion, and ultimately of destruction. So yeah, not good. Bobby Williams, are rationally and benevolent combatants, i.e., is it reasonable to assume that a more rational person will be more benevolent? Are rationality and benevolence concomitant? Jesus, I can't read. Are rationality and benevolence concomitant? Yes. Yes. Partially because when you're rational, things work out. Since rationality is, in a sense, knowing how to conform with reality or knowing how to conform reality to you, then things work out. You gain success. That success builds the benevolence. Rationality, properly based and understood, is commensurate with reality. It's the idea that you can deal with reality and you should deal with reality. And you're capable of dealing with reality. That is, that rationality works. It's the whole basis of the morality. How can you not be benevolent if you're really committed to reason and you understand what reason is? All right. Thank you, Bobby. All right. Adam has a question. Does anyone know if I donate to Yaron through his website, if there's a way I can get a YouTube membership through that donation, or do I have to buy the membership via YouTube? So here's the thing. You have to buy the membership through YouTube, but what I suggest is that you go to YouTube and you buy a minimum membership, like $5. And if you want to do more than that, then do it through my website, which basically means either through Patreon or PayPal. Because YouTube takes a lot more transaction costs. Transaction costs are much higher on YouTube. But I cannot, YouTube does not allow me to give you membership if you contribute on another platform. I don't have any mechanism by which to connect you, right? So, so yes, make the minimal contribution to become a member, which I think is $5 a month on YouTube. And then if you want to do more, then go to Patreon and make the contribution there. That's what the website will connect you to. Thanks, Adam. I appreciate you wanting to become a supporter. Thank you to all the Super Chatters. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the fact that we made the goal. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will see you all tomorrow at the same time, 3 o'clock. And yeah, I mean, the news cycle is a little slow right now, I have to admit. It's a little more difficult to find, and it's less exciting. There's less like, big stories out there. There are no wars right now, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So hopefully, hopefully we don't need wars. When I have wars, we have 400 people watching live. But I think it's better we don't have wars, even though I think financially I do better with wars. Kind of weird, no? No, it was a fast of 2025 up until now. It just slowed down suddenly. All right, everybody. I'm sure Trump will come up with something to excite us. But it has to be original. Like, how many more times can we talk about tariffs? How many more? And all the people who object to my position on tariffs kind of have disappeared. They don't ask questions anymore. All right, everybody. I will see you tomorrow at 3 p.m. East Coast time right here. Bye. Have a great rest of your day.